Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen. Today I'm going to discuss with you what I'm going to call the new offshore banking strategy. And I think this is especially relevant for people in fields like crypto, but the truth is just today, with the way that the banking environment is, this is a smart strategy for pretty much anyone. I would say even people who are onshore or offshore, this is a strategy that I would recommend for everybody. So I'm going to go through that with you a little bit. Just kind of think about the concept of how corporate structures often work. I'm going to give you some context. What we would often do when we would have asset protection structures is we'd have operating companies, holding companies, and trusts. And the whole idea is essentially that operating companies, take on liability, and holding companies then hold assets, and then trusts, sometimes trusts wouldn't be in there, but basically prevent it from the other direction. So that was kind of the general philosophy. Now, we kind of innovated on that over the years, and we did kind of parallel structures, and then we did fancy different investment structures that were parallel, and a variety of different things like that. But that being said, there's a lot to be said for how it is that you kind of have like specialties. So before I dive into all this, if you haven't already, please smash the subscribe button, nail the notification bell. Really appreciate you subscribing. Make sure you hit all on notifications so you don't miss out on any of our future videos. Try to produce great content for you every single day. Really appreciate your support. And if you want help with international structuring, either for yourself or for your business, pay the lowest legal amount of taxes possible, do asset protection on the strategy side, or setting up businesses, getting residency permits, getting citizenships, unofficial citizenship programs, et cetera, please reach out to us. You can book a call with me at calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer, the link in the description below, or you can check out our websites, offshorecitizen.net, offshorecapitalist.com, and you can send us a message through there. All right, after that long introduction, let's dive into it. So I've been saying for a while now that what we should have, that I always recommend everyone today, and this is kind of a change from, if I was to go back to, let's see here, how long I've been doing this for. Certainly, pre-FATCA, okay, so kind of 2015, it was pretty normal that you could just set up a bank account and set up an offshore company, and that was pretty decent, right? You're like, okay, great, I'm gonna set up a company in Anguilla, I'm gonna get a bank account in Cayman Islands, and off we go. If you go back even further than that, it was easier, right? Unfortunately, as we are aware, it's gotten harder to open bank accounts, right? Various jurisdictions are more difficult to deal with. And we're in a position where bank accounts get closed frequently, et cetera. So if you've been following this channel for a while, you know that my general advice is always have backup accounts. So at least 2 personal accounts, at least 2 accounts per business. Sometimes if you want 3, that's good. I usually recommend throwing a brokerage account in there because that's very stable, and if you need to transfer money around in a hurry, someplace safe, you can put it there, and then that kind of buys you some time. That being said, there's kind of a new thing that I have started advising people to do, and I figured I'd bring it to your attention. And this concerns how to use different caliber of banking together with each other. Okay, so what am I referring to here? Well, there's oftentimes banks that they achieve a certain objective for you. So I'm going to use the example of crypto. Allow you to cash out crypto. A lot of banks, the majority of banks, are going to have a trouble dealing with crypto. They don't like it. They don't want to accept transfers that the funds originate in crypto, et cetera, right? So what do? Well, you could deal over here with these banks that are easy to deal with. You could try and, artificially construct these other transactions so that they slip past the bank's standards, so the banks don't know that it's coming from crypto. I think neither of those are great options. I think the better way to go, and the way that I would advise you to go, is to say, okay, great, I'm going to set up a bank account here, which is for receiving my transactions from crypto, right? I'm cashing out my cryptos that I made. Awesome, this is good. This bank is comfortable with it. All is good. But do I necessarily want to keep 7 figures in there, 8 figures in there? Probably not, right? If I just think about it, the number of banks that I would be willing to keep 8 figures in is fairly low, right? I mean, a lot of places I'm like, okay, hey, listen, heck, you go to Montenegro and they have deposit insurance of $50,000, which we know works because they had 2 banks go down a couple years ago, right? So we're like, okay, great. up to 50,000 euros in any Montenegrin bank, we're perfectly happy, right? Most places up to 100,000, we're pretty happy. In fact, realistically, most places we're quite fine being with, a few 100,000. When we start crossing into the 7 figures, we're like, all right, you know what, should maybe be a little bit more cautious about where we're banking, right? By the time we're at 8 figures, it's like, okay, this is, starting to be a serious amount of money here. So I don't know that we want to just use any bank. And so where do you start going? Well, that's where you definitely want Singapore or Switzerland, the US, major banks, Australian, Canadian, maybe UK, Germany. There's a handful of countries where you're like, okay, I want big institutions, I want big financial systems that are backing them, I want, stable asset bases. I want to know that there's like a lot of checks and balances in place that if something goes wrong, my money's protected, right? Okay. Unfortunately, very often those banks are difficult accounts to get, and they're often kind of like wary of certain types of transactions. So here's the basic strategy. The basic strategy is get those accounts, okay? Provided that you have enough liquidity, et cetera. Like if you're saying, hey, listen, I'm looking for some place to store 50 grand, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Get a couple, whatever's easiest, get 2 or 3 of them, you're good. But if you're saying, okay, great, I would say this is particularly applicable when you start talking about, high 6, 7 figures, right? I definitely want to go beyond being diversified at that point in time. And I want to say, okay, I want to really be paying attention to the quality and the stability of these institutions. So I say, okay, great, I'm going to get the good quality bank. So let's just, for example, say I'm going to get banking in Switzerland, right? I'm going to say, okay, great, I'm going to pick a top tier bank there. I'm going to go through the process of their compliance. They're going to get comfortable with me. I'm going to have a wealth management, private banker. I'm going to be able to WhatsApp them. I'm going to be able to have them assist me. That's great, right? That's a good experience. But am I going to be able to, bring in whatever funds? Maybe. You might be able to. But here's the question. That's a really hard account to get. Do you want to risk that account? Probably not, right? Probably not. So what I want to do is anything that I'm concerned about, I want to basically layer it through another account that's easier to get, that's maybe more flexible, but I'm willing to lose, right? It's not the bank that I want to store, millions of dollars in, but it's going to serve its purpose. And why is this important? Well, oftentimes these banks have kind of like specific niches that they appeal to, right? Hey, this one here allows you to have cards that you can pay your employees anywhere, right? Great. I mean, that's a really valid, useful use case, right? But, that's got a certain degree of risk because the bank is thinking, well, hang on a minute. Any one of those people who has the cards, these employees, they could be going and withdrawing cash from an ATM and doing God knows what with it, right? Banks don't like that. So as a result, what do we want to do? We want to separate that risk from this pot of gold we've got here. We don't want to lose our key banking relationship. And so the bigger you get, my recommendation would be to say, hey, listen, have 1 or 2 major, super solid banking relationships, perfect. Then have banking relationships which are purpose-driven, right? Now, maybe you're not in a situation where you need this, right? If you're somebody who all they're doing is investing in stocks and you're going to use the bank's brokerage services and you're doing, some basic transactional, for your life, then it's probably not an issue. But if you're running a business where, hey, listen, I don't know, you're getting affiliate payments, right? Or you're doing something with drop shipping and, maybe the bank decides they don't like drop shipping. Maybe you're having to pay contractors in Africa. You're hiring some developers in Ukraine. You're whatever. As much as that might seem legit, the reality is that banks consider transactional banking to be riskier than holding banking. That's just the way that it goes. So the more that I can separate that out, the better. So what do? You say, okay, great, I have a bank for that. And that bank, you don't need to have the same standards on it, right? I sometimes have people come to me and they're like, oh, well, I'm worried about this bank. It's like, well, if all you're doing is flowing funds through there, which by the way, some of these banks don't even want to hold your funds. For example, there's a bank in Lithuania that the owners are in Israel, who I met with when I was in Israel last time. And, basically they told me, they're like, hey, listen, I don't want to hold your money. Like, I have to pay fees to hold your money. So what am I going to do? I'm going to just say, all right, what they want to do, they want to do Forex, they want to do transactions, they want to charge fees for that. Cool, great. Like, perfectly good to use that bank for that purpose. and then everything else, let's not use them for that. Let's instead, the funds can come in there, you can do your transactions, and then you're going to pull the excess profits into, you know, a more stable holding bank where maybe you do your investing from, etc. So anyway, that's like this simple strategy. I hope it helps. Hope it's something useful to think about. It is definitely a way that A, you can make your banking relationships more stable. B, you can actually increase the number of banks that you can get access to because you can kind of purpose build them. And 3, you can be in a position where you're going to have longer term relationships that generally just go better. You're probably going to have an easier time getting accounts. So anyway, hope that helps. If you liked it, let me know, give it a thumbs up. If not, please tell us why in the comments. If you have questions, please mention it in the comments below. And if you are interested at all in any sort of help, aside from subscribing, definitely feel free to reach out, book a call, calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer. Again, link in the description below. And I'm going to look forward to seeing you guys on the next video.